This is Maria Twena with the final reading of the final chapter of MariVi in the school crossing story. It's getting close to the holidays, so if I forget to say this later, have a beautiful holiday. So today we're going to read the accidente, which is Spanish for accident. The second the recess bell rang, I jumped out of my seat to run away from how bad I was feeling. After throwing my brown lunch bag and lunch away, I looked for Gordo and Isa and couldn't find them. Then I remembered that Isa had told me that she and Gordo would be having recess with the older kids at a different time than I would. I felt very alone and lost, but then the sounds of everyone having fun became louder and louder. I could hear kids screaming and watch them play. Tetherball, kickball, jump rope, catch, and the hopscotch, my favorite. Many kids were running to what looked like a little stand at the end of the playground. I had not noticed it the first time I had visited the school, but I did now. A long line was forming. I was very shy, so I put my head down and followed many of my classmates to the line. I could smell the fresh popcorn as I got closer. I loved popcorn. We had gone to the movies only once, and I remember how much I enjoyed smelling and eating the popcorn almost as much as watching the movie. As I got closer, my mouth started watering. I saw the sign at the top of the stand, the number 10 and the cent sign, so I assumed it was 10 cents a bag. My shoulders slumped to join the rest of my body. I didn't have 10 cents with me. I didn't know we needed money for anything at school. And here's a beautiful illustration from Amy Ubler of the fresh popcorn, both the sign and the bag. As I started to turn away, my classmate Karen saw me and asked, "Mary, do you want some popcorn?" "Yes," I said, "but I forgot to bring my money." I didn't want to tell her that I didn't have any money except what was in my piggy bank at home. Karen said, "Don't worry, I'll get it for you and you can get me a bag tomorrow." Wow, I thought, this is great. I can get a bag of popcorn and have something warm for lunch. As Karen was paying for the popcorn, she asked, "Mary, do you want to play hopscotch with me?" I said, "Yes. Can you please call me MariVi? That's what my real name is." Karen replied, "Okay, MariVi, how is that spelled?" So I spelled it for her, Marivi. She said, "That's a weird name. I've never heard it before. What does it mean?" "It's a nickname for Maria Victoria," I responded. The Mari is for Maria and the V is for Victoria. Karen replied, "I like that. What a pretty name. Let's go play." A huge smile came out of nowhere from deep inside of me. I didn't want recess to end ever. We played hopscotch during recess, but the popcorn made me super thirsty. So when the third bell rang, which meant recess was ending, I ran to the water fountain and drank water. A lot of water. I drank for so long that one of the teachers asked me to please move quickly as others needed to drink before classes started again. I should have realized my tummy was full by the time I got to my classroom, but I didn't. And even though the first thing Mrs. Smith told us that morning was, "Raise your hand if you need to go to the bathroom," I didn't. In fact, I couldn't. I didn't want anyone to notice me. So after lunch, after not going to the bathroom all day, I went inside the cloakroom where we kept our school bags to get a new pencil and paper for class. And before I knew it, I felt something dripping down my legs and I couldn't make it stop no matter how hard I tried. As the liquid dribbled down my legs, the tears rolled down my cheeks at the same time. And when I finally could open my eyes, all I could see were my classmates staring at me, and all I could hear was their loud laughter. The ones that weren't staring at me were running to Mrs. Smith to tell her what happened while pointing at me. In that moment, I wanted to disappear forever, but was too busy searching for my lip to bite. I couldn't find my lips. They were covered in tears. I couldn't even feel them. Mrs. Smith tried to get me to leave the cloakroom, but I couldn't. She then went to the office to call my mother while I stayed in the cloakroom. I was cold, scared, crying, and shaking uncontrollably. My stomach started to hurt like never before. My classmate Karen, who had paid for my popcorn, reached out to hold my hand, but I pulled away, too ashamed to have her help me. Since Mama spoke very little English and Mrs. Smith didn't speak Spanish, there was a lot of confusion when Mrs. Smith told her, "Your daughter Mary has had an accident at school." Mama told me later that when she heard the word accident, very close to accidente in Spanish, she assumed I had been hit by a car and had died on Bonneville Boulevard, the big street in front of my school. That's why Mama had hung up, called a taxi, and showed up in the cloakroom clutching her rosary no more than 8 minutes after Mrs. Smith called her. But to me, it felt like a long, long time. When Mama found me in the cloakroom, she kept crying and hugging me and touching my arms and legs to see if I had broken anything in the accident. I felt like the world was telling me, you don't belong here. You don't belong anywhere. Since Mama had not understood that the accident had not been related to being hit by a car, she didn't bring a fresh set of clothes for me to change into. I was excused to go home early, only by half an hour, as the first day of school was ending early anyway. And since it was Friday, I would have the weekend to recover from all the events of the day. I needed the time. My brother and sister were going to go home on the bus a little later in the day, so Mama asked me to ask the front office to call a taxi, and we went outside to wait for it. I also had to call Abuelita to let her know that I was alive and that we were on our way home. I gave the front office my home number so they could call, and then I spoke to Abuelita in Spanish. I spoke as softly as I possibly could. Her hearing wasn't that great, so she must have had her ear really close to the phone because she heard everything I had to say and didn't ask me once to repeat myself between my sobs. I guess she could tell I was crying. I would have offered to walk home with Mama, but I was wet and ashamed, and I couldn't get my knees to stop shaking. I tried not to speak to her too much at school, since I needed to speak Spanish to her, and I didn't want any of the school kids to overhear us. She was busy praying out loud in Spanish anyway and kept saying, Gracias, Dios mío. Thank you, my God, as she tightly clasped her rosary. The quiet taxi neared the house. Neither of us had said a word on the drive back home. I think my mom was silently praying. I could see Abuelita at the door waiting for me with a warm glass of chocolate milk, hoping for the best. As I got out of the taxi, Mama asked me to pay the cab driver while she gave me the money. I thanked him in English and paid him. I had to do this kind of thing a lot: translate for Mama, pay for things, and explain things. As I was opening the door to get out of the taxi, I realized that my cross had stayed inside my shirt the whole time and that Mama hadn't noticed, or if she hadn't mentioned anything. So here I am pulling out the cross from my shirt. I quickly put the cross outside my shirt and again said to Jesus, sorry. But this time I held the cross for a moment once it was outside my shirt and whispered, thank you. I ran inside the house as fast as I could, worried that neighbors would notice all the activity, while trying to figure out a way to never go to school again as long as I lived. I didn't know then, as embarrassed as I was, school would be the best part of my life while growing up, and Karen would become my best friend. So thanks again for listening to the 4-part series, and thank you, BELatina, for hosting this reading. It's been a lot of fun. Again, the book is called School Crossing. It's the first of a series of childhood books for kids from first grade to 8th grade. It's called the Master Navigator series, and the primary character is MariVi. Her name is Maria Victoria because ultimately she is victorious in terms of blending her two worlds and becoming completely bicultural and bilingual and using it as her superpower down the road. So thanks for joining. Happy holidays, whatever you celebrate, Christmas, Hanukkah, enjoy whatever the celebration is. And thank you again. And if you have a relative who has a bicultural child or know folks that are bicultural, the book is being well received, not just by children, but by adults who have lived MariVi's experience. So again, happy holidays and thank you, BELatina. Feliz Navidad, próspero año nuevo, felices fiestas. Muchas gracias.